Alex Eala met fans at Nike Fort Taguig before the presidential palace.
I have to go fast. I am pretty nervous.
On July 13th, 2026, two completely different places became part of the same unforgettable story. One was filled with excited fans waiting to meet their tennis hero, while the other welcomed the nation's fastest rising sports star into the highest office in the Philippines. Although the settings could not have been more different, they were connected by the same emotion, the same anticipation, and the same young athlete standing at the center of it all. What unfolded that Monday showed how quickly one remarkable Wimbledon run had transformed Alex Eala from a rising tennis player into a national icon.
Alex, you have such pride to the Philippines, and not only because of your success, also because the grace which you handle that success.
Picture the first scene. It is late morning in Bonifacio Global City, where a long line stretches outside Nike Fort. Fans patiently wait for a special event called Play Mind Games with Alex Eala, expecting an honest conversation about pressure, discipline, and the unseen work that shapes a professional athlete. Near the front of the line, a young fan clutches her phone with both hands while someone behind her quietly admits, "I'm so nervous." Now shift to the second scene later, that same Monday evening inside the ceremonial hall of Malacanang Palace. The president of the Philippines is ready to welcome one of the country's brightest sports stars, and the 21-year-old Alex Eala, newly listed at a career-high world number 28, prepares to address the room. When she stands to speak, she smiles and admits that she is pretty nervous herself. Suddenly, those two very different rooms feel remarkably alike. On both sides of the microphone are people experiencing the same excitement and emotion. To understand why an entire nation celebrated one athlete in two separate ceremonies on the same day, you have to go back just 9 days. On July 4th, 2026, on center court at Wimbledon, the 29th-seeded Alexandra Eala produced one of the biggest victories of her career by defeating defending champion IGA Swiatek 7-6, 6-2. The historic win made her the first Filipino singles player in the Open era to reach the fourth round of a Grand Slam. Although her inspiring run ended with a 3-set defeat to Jasmine Paolini, her return home became far more than a routine media tour. It became a nationwide celebration. There was no rivalry or controversy waiting for her in Manila. Instead, the real story centered on the quiet challenge of balancing two identities. One was the dedicated athlete who spent countless hours training away from cameras, gradually climbing from around world number 140 at the beginning of 2025 into the top 30 by the summer of 2026 through relentless work, travel, and sacrifice. The other was the symbol of national pride, embraced by millions of Filipinos who now look to her as an inspiration that reached far beyond tennis. That evening, the Presidential Communications Office highlighted the president's remarks, and notably, his opening message focused not on trophies or rankings, but on something even more meaningful, her character.
Alex, you have such pride to the Philippines.
The president praised Alex Eala for bringing immense pride to the Philippines, explaining that her impact extended well beyond the victories she achieved on the court. He emphasized that what truly inspired the nation was the grace, humility, and composure she displayed while handling her growing success. Those words reflected why her Wimbledon journey resonated so deeply with Filipinos. It was not simply about winning matches. It was about representing the country with dignity, earning admiration around the world, and proving that true greatness is measured not only by results, but also by the way success is carried.
And not only because of your success, also because the grace which you handle that success.
For many Filipinos watching the live stream, that single sentence carried more emotion than any Wimbledon scoreline because it marked the moment Alex Eala stopped being viewed simply as a successful tennis player and became something much bigger, a national symbol. And being a symbol is a far greater responsibility than holding any ranking. At just 21 years old, she was already preparing for her next challenge, with the Mubadala City DC Open in Washington scheduled to begin on July 25th. Only 12 days separated her reception at Malacanang Palace from stepping back onto a hard court for another first-round match. That is the quiet tension surrounding her remarkable rise. No one planned for it to happen this way. It is simply what occurs when a career moves faster than the calendar itself. The story begins that morning at Nike Fort in Bonifacio Global City, a part of the day that much of the international media barely covered. Nike welcomed fans to what it described as a morning of stories, lessons, and meaningful conversations beyond the court. Those words, beyond the court, captured the true purpose of the event. This was never meant to be just another autograph session or photo opportunity. It was presented as a masterclass on the mindset of a champion. Eala arrived wearing a crisp white shirt featuring a Filipino-inspired design, while lifestyle reporters also noticed her ruffled socks, with GMA Lifestyle even publishing a feature on where fans could find a similar pair. Yet beyond the fashion headlines, the event focused on something much deeper. The discussion centered on handling pressure, building mental strength, and embracing the countless unseen hours that shape an elite athlete's career. According to ABS-CBN's coverage from inside the event, Alex reflected on her younger self, the little girl who once dreamed of moments like these, and admitted that reality had become even more incredible than she had ever imagined. That was the morning. By evening, the setting had completely changed. Inside the ceremonial hall of Malacanang Palace, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. hosted a formal homecoming reception and presented Eala with a presidential citation recognizing her historic Wimbledon achievement. The Philippine news agency reported that the honor officially celebrated her becoming the first Filipino singles player to reach the round of 16 of a Grand Slam tournament in the Open era. Surrounded by family, guests, and government officials, the president welcomed her with heartfelt words. He began by saying, whenever we have these programs here, I always begin by saying it is my pleasure to receive you. And when I say that tonight, it's not polite. I really am so happy to have you here. Later, he added, you have brought such pride to the Philippines, to the Filipinos, and not only because of your success, but also because of the grace with which you handle that success. You show the greatest qualities of Filipinos. His praise was striking because it focused not on rankings, trophies, or even her famous victory over IGA Swiatek. Instead, he chose to recognize her character and humility. The nation was not celebrating only what Alex had accomplished on the tennis court. It was celebrating the person she had become. Then came the moment that brought the entire room to silence. Alex stood before the president and began with a confession few world-class athletes would ever make in such a setting. She smiled and admitted, I have to confess I normally do not get very nervous when I have to talk, but today is the exception. I am pretty nervous. Think about the significance of those words. Only 9 days earlier, she had walked onto center court at Wimbledon and defeated six-time Grand Slam champion IGA Swiatek before a worldwide audience without showing the slightest sign of fear. Yet speaking inside the presidential palace carried an entirely different weight. She then delivered the words that the Philippine news agency highlighted as the emotional heart of the evening. I feel very seen hearing that come from you. I feel like all the hard work that I've done is seen. All the hours that aren't on TV are seen and validated and appreciated. Every professional athlete understands those unseen hours of training, sacrifice, and quiet perseverance, but very few ever receive the chance to have those efforts acknowledged by the nation they represent. That evening, Alex did. She then switched to Tagalog, reminding everyone in the room that this achievement belonged to the entire country, saying, this is our victory, ours together, all of us. She continued by declaring, I take great pride in being Filipino. I carry the flag with me wherever I go. And I promise that I will continue to represent the Philippines in the best way that I possibly can. Asterisk, those words transformed the ceremony from a simple news event into a lasting national memory. To understand why the Philippines embraced her achievement so quickly, however, you have to look back at what happened before she ever returned home. It was not Manila that first told the world Alex Eala was becoming one of tennis' brightest new stars. It was center court at Wimbledon. On the morning of July 5th, international tennis coverage made one thing unmistakably clear: Alex Eala's Wimbledon breakthrough had become a global story. ESPN led its tennis coverage by highlighting that she had dethroned the defending champion. Sky Sports described the result as a huge shock, while The Athletic, through the New York Times, placed her remarkable run at the top of its Day 6 Wimbledon recap, writing that she had exploded into the sport's wider consciousness. These were not Philippine media outlets celebrating a hometown success. These were some of the world's most influential sports organizations deciding, in real time, that Alex Eala's rise deserved international attention. When respected global voices all reached the same conclusion over the same weekend, people far beyond the tennis world begin paying attention, including national leaders. That is the part of the journey most fans never see. The reception at Malacanang Palace on July 13th did not create Alex Eala's story. It acknowledged one that had already been recognized across the international tennis landscape. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. was not introducing her achievement to the world. He was honoring a moment that the world's biggest tennis outlets had already declared impossible to ignore. Looking at the bigger picture, July 13th became significant, not because of one event, but because of how rapidly everything unfolded. The Philippines has welcomed home sporting heroes before, from Manny Pacquiao to Olympic gold medalist Hidilyn Diaz. But what made this occasion unique was its extraordinary pace. Alex met fans at Nike Fort in Bonifacio Global City that morning, attended a formal presidential reception later that evening, and already had another public fan celebration scheduled for July 15th at Glorieta Activity Center. It felt almost like a relay race, with the private sector and the government passing the spotlight from one venue to another without pause. That kind of momentum only happens when a nation is trying to keep pace with an athlete whose career is accelerating faster than anyone expected. Remarkably, the very same day she received her presidential citation, the WTA rankings listed her at a career-high world number 28. In less than 24 hours, both the tennis world and her own country had recognized how far she had come. Beyond the ceremonies, however, the practical reality was just as important. Holding a top 30 ranking places Alex firmly among the seeded players at the biggest hardcourt tournaments, fundamentally changing the path ahead of her. The next phase of her career will be different because opponents will no longer view her as an underdog capable of surprising the field. Instead, she becomes the player everyone prepares for. That transition begins with the Mubadala City DC Open in Washington, where competition resumes on July 25th. Yet amid all the celebrations, one important fact remained unchanged. Alex did not leave Wimbledon with a trophy. Her inspiring run ended in the round of 16 with a hard-fought three-set loss to Jasmine Paolini, 4-6, 6-4, 3-6. The ceremony at Malacanang was never about celebrating a championship. It honored a breakthrough, a moment that permanently changed what Filipino tennis could believe was possible. Alex herself acknowledged that reality, explaining that the recognition was not the finish line, but motivation to pursue even greater achievements. Before returning to competition, she planned a 3-week break to prepare for Washington, where another difficult draw waited against elite players including Marta Kostyuk, Naomi Osaka, and Venus Williams. The transition back to competition would be immediate and demanding because the unseen work she spoke about inside the palace would begin again almost immediately. Those countless training sessions, quiet practices, and sacrifices away from television cameras would continue exactly as before. The difference now is that an entire nation understands those invisible hours far better than it did before. Looking back, July 13th was never simply about two separate events. It was about two different rooms connected by one extraordinary story. In the morning, fans stood in line, nervous to meet Eala. That evening, Alex herself stood before the president of the Philippines, admitting she was nervous to speak. In that sense, the two rooms reflected one another perfectly. Everyone present, whether waiting in a sneaker store or seated inside the presidential palace, shared the same hope of witnessing something meaningful. Nike had described the morning as a series of conversations beyond the court, and in many ways, everything that truly mattered that Monday happened beyond the tennis court. What Eala represents today extends far beyond a ranking or even a historic Wimbledon run. Remarkable as both accomplishments are, she represents proof that a Filipino athlete can stand on one of the biggest stages in world sport, compete fearlessly against the very best, and inspire millions with both performance and character. When she thanked everyone by saying that the unseen hours had finally been recognized, and then repeated her gratitude in Tagalog, she reminded the country that this achievement belonged not only to her, but to every Filipino who believed in the journey. That is why July 13th, 2026, will be remembered not simply as the day Eala was honored, but as the day an entire nation saw its own aspirations reflected back through one remarkable athlete.